Brendan Baylod from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group, and welcome to Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live. Should be a great show tonight. I'm really happy to have another just wonderful guest with us tonight. Give it a couple of minutes for people to join. I've got some big announcements, a lot of big stuff going on the group this week, and a really fantastic lineup of things to talk about. So welcome, everybody. Couple of things to talk about. Our special guest tonight. We're really privileged to have someone who really has had involvement in many different areas of maritime history. Tonight we have the executive director of the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, Cathy Green. Welcome, Cathy.
Hello. Thank you, Brendan. Hello, everyone.
Thanks so much for being with us. I've known Cathy for years, and it's interesting. I think I first met Cathy at the Ghost Ships Festival. Oh gosh, it must be 15 years ago, more than that even. I lose track of time, you know.
Yeah, early 2000s for sure.
I think so. And Cathy and her husband Russ were our state underwater archaeologists here in Wisconsin, and we had and we still have just a wonderful underwater archaeology program, and they helped build it. But Cathy has come back to Wisconsin as the director of the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, one of my favorite institutions in the world, and one that I've been actively involved in for many years as a former board member and on their excellent publication, formerly known as Anchor News, now called The Anchor. It's a wonderful maritime publication. So really great to have you with us, Cathy.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And again, this is kind of like pulling together a lot of different things for me over the last 20 years. So I just I'm excited to be here to talk to you, to represent the museum, but also kind of to talk to and interact with my people here in this Great Lakes Maritime Research community.
Oh, wonderful. We're glad to have you. So a couple of housekeeping things I wanted to get out of the way. The Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group is about to hit its 2,000th member. Unbelievable. I sound like a broken record, but this was supposed to be sort of a small thing for me and, you know, the real hardcore shipwreck research geeks. But it filled a real public niche. People are really interested in Great Lakes shipwrecks, and not just, you know, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. They want to hear about these new discoveries and about, you know, how we find these and the backstories. And so the group has really grown. To celebrate our 2,000th member, and because we're all locked down, I have decided to have an online shipwreck festival. So we are going to host the Inland Seas Online Shipwreck Festival on April 25th, Saturday. And that's coming up pretty quick. We are going to have, at this time, 5 different presenters come on throughout the day, starting at 10 a.m. So 10, 11, and then we'll take some time off for lunch. And then 1, 2, and 3. And at 4 o'clock, we're going to have an online happy hour, video happy hour, where you bring your own beverage, and we'll see how many people we can get on video. Still working that out, how I'm going to do that. I might use Zoom. I might use a different technology. But should be a great event. If you're locked down and you want to, you know, and you can't go to any of the shipwreck festivals because they've all been canceled this year, come on to this one. It's free. There's no entrance fee. You just have to be a member of the group. So that's a big thing coming up. We've got a few excellent speakers so far. Rick Mixter has agreed to present. Wes Olszewski will be presenting. Tammy Thompson, our state underwater archaeologist, is going to be on the show. And I believe we're going to have Jerry Eliason, who has made many shipwreck discoveries on Lake Superior. So please consider joining us. It should be a great show. Now, I also want to cover our upcoming presenters. So this show is still, you know, every Wednesday night. Next Wednesday, we have a really interesting guest. I'm coming over to the Eastern Lakes, and we've got Tom Kowalczyk from Cleveland Underwater Explorers that'll be joining us on the show. And Tom has been involved with the National Museum of the Great Lakes in Toledo and their Peachman Shipwreck Center with Carrie Soden, the underwater archaeologist there. And he have worked together closely. He's found many wrecks on Lake Erie. So if you're an Eastern Lakes or a Lake Erie person, you're going to like next week's show. Tom's a great guy, a great researcher, and a good friend. So feel free to join us. So let's get back to our show. If you all, we're getting some questions, or some questions, but we're getting a lot of comments already. So thanks everybody for the comments. I appreciate that. I want to let everybody know that Cathy and I have talked, and she would like you to feel free to ask questions throughout the talk tonight. So we'll be watching for those on the right. I want to warn everybody, occasionally I don't see the questions in real time. It's supposed to be in real time, but for some reason there's some lag. So if I don't see your question right away, it's not, or if I don't ask your question right away, it's not because it's because I didn't see it yet. So be patient. So anyway, Cathy, what a pleasure to have you, and such a bunch of great stuff to talk about. But as I usually do, I like to give our public a chance to meet our presenters and get to know about them and their background. So, how did you end up getting interested in nautical archaeology? That's a kind of an arcane thing to pursue. And how did you end up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, it's been a journey, right? As it is for most of us. I'm from the Midwest, but actually from just outside Louisville, Kentucky, and a small town just over the Ohio River in southern Indiana. So believe it or not, even though I'm from Indiana, it kind of was a maritime town. And so growing up right on the river, I was always interested in boating and sailing, spent a lot of times in the summer at camps where I sailed on small boats. And when I was in college, I studied history, and I studied abroad in England, in Canterbury. I joined the sailing club over there and traveled all over England, doing small boat racing, and kind of just reinforced not only my interest in history, my interest in museums, but also that maritime interest. So everything kind of solidified there. And when I came back to finish my senior year at Indiana University, I focused on museum studies. And so, all these things that I'm ending up now at the museum kind of were in formation for, over 20 years. When I finished school, I ended up in Bermuda, and I worked at the Bermuda Maritime Museum. And that's where I came across a group of students from East Carolina University who were studying nautical archaeology and maritime history. I didn't know this was something one could do. And I went back to graduate school and at East Carolina. So that's where I kind of dove into this, so to speak, and made it a career. The way I came back, or came to Wisconsin, back to the Midwest, is one of the last field schools I did was here in Wisconsin. We came up here with a group of students, and Brad Rogers, who I'm sure a lot of people know, ran that field school, and it was up in Sturgeon Bay. And I remember very distinctly, we stopped in Madison, met Jeff Gray, the state archaeologist there. We went to Manitowoc and stopped at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum because they had this fantastic cross-section of a schooner. And we had been, studying maritime history at that time, I had been down there for a couple years. And I remember looking at this huge, 2-scale section of how a schooner went together. And it was the first time it all made sense. All that ship construction came together looking at that. And that's still there today. It's just so funny kind of how things come around. That field school we did in Sturgeon Bay, we mapped those 3 Bullhead Point shipwrecks that are right up there. And when Jeff was looking for somebody to come on board, he called me, and eventually also my husband Russ, and we ended up in Wisconsin about 2001. We were there for about 5 years, then went to go work for the National Marine Sanctuary Program over in Michigan at Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We were there about 13 years. I was an archaeologist, but also ended up heading up their education and outreach programs as well. And that was just such a great experience because when I started there, the sanctuary was new. We didn't have a facility, and over the course of over a dozen years, it grew into a real something really special. It was the centerpiece of kind of a cultural awakening in the town to their maritime heritage. We had a fantastic facility with exhibits that we planned and executed and programs. Glass Bottom Boat came to town. It really was a great transformation story. It just was a wonderful opportunity. I couldn't have been more happy, though, to get back here about 3 or 4 years ago and connecting with some of my old friends at the Maritime Museum just to help out. And it kind of evolved quickly into coming on board officially and as the director last July.
Wow, what an amazing career. I mean, just the kind of things that, I know many of our viewers would love to do: underwater archaeology and working in a museum, and all the places you've done that too. I mean, Thunder Bay, what an amazing place. I mean, with a lot of cool shipwrecks. So,
Oh yeah. And it's, I mean, I think having, worked all over the country, all over the world, and I say this with all sincerity, that the shipwrecks we have here in the Great Lakes, this group, of course, knows the preservation here is just so incredible. And up in Thunder Bay, that's where that really hit home to me, because there's just so many things up there that are untouched, or just you can see the construction detail. The stories of these wrecks are still intact. And so to have an opportunity at some place like the Visitor Center there to tell that story from the perspective of the artifacts, from the archaeology, from the historic collections, man, that was really amazing stuff. And so now to come back to Wisconsin and kind of reapply that from the great foundation that's already here, it is a dream come true. I can't believe how lucky I am every day.
yeah, and it's wonderful to have you here too, with your background and your experience. We have so many wrecks that whose stories are not told here. We have a lot of undiscovered wrecks in Wisconsin waters, and that's one of the things we like to do on our group here. If you read, and I know you're a member and you have been from almost the start. You see that we do a lot of research to try to identify these ships and to try to tell their stories. And I know that one of the things that you're really invested in and working hard at is getting to tell those stories at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. And it's just a wonderful museum. For those of you who haven't been there, and I'm biased, but because I'm in Wisconsin, but I think it's the best maritime museum on the Great Lakes. Apologies to my friends in Toledo and other places, but it's just a stunning facility. And what a great opportunity to leverage that to tell stories of shipwrecks. Can you tell me a little bit more about the museum for our audience? Because a lot of people are from Michigan or from other states, and they don't know about our museum. Why don't you give us a little tour?
Yeah, you bet. And if you want, I have a PowerPoint I can use to help kind of illustrate an introduction here. So let me just pull that up.
All right.
And
while you do that, Cathy was talking about that hull model that we have there, the half hull. We use that. The Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association uses that to show do our trainings and our classes. It's really an amazing resource.
it isn't, that's one of the things about about the last 20 years of my work in Wisconsin. One of the things that strikes me that's unique about the Great Lakes is that the participation of avocational archaeologists, wreck hunters, academic archaeologists, state and federal support. I mean, it's pretty unique, I think, to get such a widespread of folks who have been contributing to this effort for I mean, 30 years at least. And you alluded to it before. We have probably the best program anywhere in the country as far as the state archaeology program. And that's, I think, also is supplemented by the best avocational program with WUA. And then to have places like the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, I mean, it's again, like you couldn't ask for a better place to be.
Our deck is stacked. We have sort of pampered shipwrecks, as I like to say. Cathy, we have a question from a viewer while we wait for the PowerPoint to come up. My oldest daughter, who's in high school, wants to go into maritime archaeology. How would you advise kids to get on that track?
That's, it's funny. And that's a question that I've gotten a lot over the years. It's, if I think about all the people I know that have gone into this field, you couldn't ask for a more diverse group. You have folks who come in this from a history background, an anthropology background, folks who come into it with zero kind of humanities academic background and are just really into the diving, and that leads them into studying the historical aspects. So all of those places, all those streams are a way to get involved. But what I found really, I think gave me the best foundation is studying the humanities, studying history, studying, literature, English, anthropology, all of those topics gives you that grounding to be able to do research. The other thing I would say is find a group like Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association. Find the folks in your area, like the Wisconsin Historical Society, that do this work, and find a way that you can get involved in their research. I think the folks who end up being in this field the longest, they're the folks who come out and volunteer. They volunteer at the museums, they volunteer on the field projects, they volunteer for the great jobs and the crummy jobs and everything in between. So, find those folks, find those organizations, and just step on up. Don't wait to be an expert. Just step in and get your hands dirty and help out.
Great advice, Cathy. Are you, by chance, sharing the PowerPoint yet? I'm not seeing it.
I am. Do you not see it?
No, I'm not getting it as an option.
Let me try this again.
All right. If necessary, I can bounce the session.
Let's see.
So while you do that, a couple of things to add on to what Cathy said. Different avocational organizations like the WUAA. There's also the Underwater Archaeological Society of Chicago, a great group. Down in Ohio, the MAST team out of the Peachman Shipwreck Center. And if you're up on Lake Superior, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Preservation Society. All great organizations for avocationalists. And then if you do have a bachelor's degree and you want to go to grad school, East Carolina has a great program. I mean, there's one at Texas A&M, and now there's one at Indiana.
That's right. Yeah. And that wasn't there when I went to school there. But yeah, they have a great program as well. West Florida has a fantastic program too.
That's right.
All right. How about that?
I've got it coming. Excellent. All right. So this is a little bit about the museum, and here you go, Cathy.
All right. Fantastic. So the Wisconsin Maritime Museum is just celebrated last year in 2019, celebrated its 50th year. So we've been around a long time, and it was a community effort to start the museum, and it really was based on Manitowoc's shipbuilding heritage. Marine building effort is what a lot of people are familiar with, but long before that, back into the mid 1800s, Manitowoc was a shipbuilding center. And because it had that rich heritage and it had the shipyards, it was able in World War II to step in when necessary and won a contract to build 28 submarines for that war effort. So that really was a centerpiece to the town's history. And what the museum was built upon. So in the mid-60s, again, a group of local folks here in Manitowoc tried to bring, at first, one of those Manitowoc subs back to the area as the Manitowoc Submarine Memorial. What they ended up being able to do is acquiring not a Manitowoc sub, but a very similar Gato-class submarine, the USS Cobia, USS 245. And Cobia came to town 50 years ago this year, and you see her there being towed in. And the museum was first, again, Manitowoc Submarine Memorial, and the museum was just Cobia. She had been stationed down in Milwaukee, used as a training vessel, and when she was done with her useful life as part of the Navy, she came up to Manitowoc. And the thing, or one of the things that makes her so special, is that she was never stripped out of all the equipment that was on board. And so we're in the unique position of having a submarine that has all the original electronics, the radios, the radar, the sonar, all the equipment. It's on board. And at this point, it's all been restored and is operational. So it's an amazing, and it gives us a great opportunity to give people that firsthand experience that's so hard to get these days, right? Everything's virtual these days, right? But we have the opportunity to give people that firsthand experience, tour the boat, and one of the key pieces of our programming is overnight programs on the submarine itself. So a lot of the times it's youth groups, Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups. They do these overnight programs. They sleep on the submarine, up to 65 kids, and they get a real immersive experience of being on a World War II submarine. One of the other things that I think is one of the most rewarding things that I've found over the last couple of years as well is we are this central gathering place for a lot of those diesel sub veterans from that post World War II period. There's not a ton of guys left, but they're very active, and they're wonderful folks. They come to the museum and they share stories. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things that I've seen over the last couple of years is getting to know some of these folks and hearing the stories they have to share. But the museum did not just stay the submarine museum. It became the Manitowoc Maritime Museum. And back in the 80s, our current facility, at least about half of our current facility, was put together. And you see actually, I believe on the left, on that black and white picture there on the right, is Henry Barkhausen, one of our key folks behind pulling this museum together. And there's that cutaway model being built in the building. So we were the Manitowoc Maritime Museum up until the early 2000s, and then we became the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, designated so by the state, but also expanded the facility itself. So in the early 2000s, we more than doubled the size of the building, adding all kinds of components, including lots more exhibit space. On the right, you see the one of the Chief Wawatam triple expansion steam engines from a Great Lakes vessel, and this is an operational steam engine. You can operate it yourself, and we just did a bunch of improvements in that gallery to make it even more interactive. Our waterways room, you see the picture on your left. We expanded the scope of what we talk about, not just a history, and not just to Manitowoc, but kind of this bigger Wisconsin and Great Lakes focus on, not just those cultural pieces, but for the environment itself. We also added a whole upper level, which includes our archives, offices, and then also you see that beautiful roof deck there where we have our sub pub in the summertime and a lot of space where we have rentals of the facility. So 50 years, over those 50 years, 250,000 field trip students, over 2 million visitors, 360,000 volunteer hours, and over 100,000 artifacts and archival pieces in our collection. So it's quite a facility.
It is, and it's just stunning. The building is just a stunning facility. But you know what's really amazing to me about it is your archives. A lot of people aren't aware. They think that, well, Milwaukee is the only place with archives. My goodness, the collection there, the research collection, is stunning.
It is. It is. And so we are an AAM, or Alliance of American Museums, accredited museum. That's a really high bar to achieve. And it means, amongst other things, we have the kind of professional wherewithal to manage our collections and archives, and all of those things, all of those standards that you have to do to be an AAM museum. So that's an important piece. And like you say, Brendan, that we have these great exhibits. I believe about 60,000 feet of space in the building. However, and it's a purpose-built museum, and I say this to especially our maintenance folks all the time, who are always chasing, problems here or there. We are so lucky to have a purpose-built facility, and it really is fantastic. But so you see here kind of the scope of our collections. We focus on Wisconsin. Kind of that whole broad spectrum of several thousand years of maritime history, and a piece that because it's my background, and I know the importance of our submerged cultural heritage. The fact that the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, since the 1990s, is also the official repository for items that have come off of those submerged cultural resources, like shipwreck artifacts. And we work closely with the state to kind of curate those. And again, the collection, you're looking at everything from works of art to those shipwreck items, to kind of the ephemera of things having to do with Wisconsin shipbuilding heritage. And Brendan, you mentioned the archive. This is a pretty spectacular resource. And it's one that we work pretty hard to try to make accessible as possible to the public. I think most people realize that it's only a very, very small percentage of what you see in a museum is what's in our collection. I mean, just a small fraction. And that goes, especially for the archives. There's so much that we have that we'd like to increase access to, so researchers can have a look at that. I'm going to pause this for just a minute.
Cathy, we have a question that came in online, and I can tell you from my experience going up there, it's a climate-controlled, moisture-controlled environment with big moving shelves and hundreds of thousands of photos. But the question is, what percentage of the collections are now digital in the archives? Great question.
That's a good question. And let me see if I can, how can I pull up? Brendan, are you still seeing kind of the PowerPoint there?
I am, with kind of a mosaic of slides.
Okay. I'm trying to pull up. Let me look here. Come on now. It's not letting me go back to that share media clip, because I wanted to go over to a Chrome tab so I can show the website.
Yeah, so you're sharing an application screen. I can turn this off if you want to try to share that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, let's do that. I will put you back on, and I will dump this, and you can now share the other screen.
Okay, let's see here.
What's amazing about the collection, guys, that Cathy's going to show you, I think, is that a lot of the stuff you can access online from the internet. You don't have to come in necessarily. They have a lot of it digitized. It's some amazing photos that you know, many people haven't ever seen before. You get to see a lot of the same ship photos out there that make the rounds. There are a lot of hidden gems in the collection that you can actually find online.
Yeah, and
Oh, we lost Cathy. She'll be back in just a moment. So for those of you, I assume that I'm still online. For those of you who don't know, the museum has gone through a major initiative to put a lot of to digitize a lot of their collections, and they have software that indexes and inventories their holdings that is actually accessible through the internet. And so you can actually go on their site and search not just their photos, for example, but also their books, and their artifacts. It's really quite amazing. Let me just really quick let Cathy know that she can come back in anytime she wants. I think she had a little bit of a connection problem there. All right. Here she comes again. All right. And you're back online, Cathy.
all right.
Just telling everybody about the availability of online access to a lot of the collections. So let me know.
Yeah, and it is only a small percentage of what we have. We're working all the time to increase that. And that's one of the things that I'll talk about in a little bit, that over this time when the building is closed, for the Safer at Home guidance, we have been working very hard to get more of the collection up online. But we'll try this again. Let me just show you. Chrome tab, our website. All right, Brendan, can you see our homepage there?
I sure can, and I
Okay.
have to put it up, and it'll just take a couple of seconds. And there we go.
Perfect.
So, Cathy, for those who can't see the URL, it is wisconsinmaritime.org, correct?
That's it. Yep. So we just this is a project we're really proud of that we did over the last year, which is completely redo our website. It was a huge undertaking that our entire staff really contributed to. But I think at this point, it's a pretty user-friendly thing. We do, I think, an admirable job of keeping it up to date. And it allows you to have a portal to a number of parts of our collection. So if you go under the collections tab, you can see we do have research requests, and we'll do kind of some preliminary work for you. You can also schedule a time to come in. We have a fantastic reading room area where you can request materials and have a look at those. You can also, of course, donate items, and I'll be happy to share some more information about that. But from home, you can actually do an awful lot. So if you go to our digital collections, we have our online database. So like many museums, we have an in-house database system that we use to maintain our collections. We use Past Perfect. And a portion of that we do have up online. So whether it's photographs or ship plans or artifacts, you can access those. We also have a few areas on the website that we've pulled out because they're number one, the most requested, but also I think some of the highlights of our collection. And the Karis collection is one of them. I'm sure a number of the Great Lakes research folks here have used this, and images online here can be searched, and you can take a look at those. Brendan, you're really familiar with this resource. Do you want to give just a brief description of the Karis collection and
Sure.
came from.
Wyatt Harris was a Great Lakes captain. He was based in Manitowoc, kind of a contemporary of Herman Runge and a lot of these early guys who first started to collect Great Lakes vessel information. Karras, his main strength is he collected vessel photos, and he had the largest vessel photo collection on the lakes. And he donated it all. It all ended up basically at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. And so you can go in and find a lot of these photos, which are not in general circulation. I know, I think it was Henry. Hey, didn't Henry donate the Karras collection to the museum?
He did. So Henry Barkhausen, who unfortunately we just lost last year, fantastic Great Lakes researcher, really a seminal player in Great Lakes maritime history, was 103 last fall. He acquired most of this collection from Karras himself, and then the remainder of it was a local family here in town in Manitowoc had it. So in the early 1980s, after Henry had this in his personal collection for years, donated it to the museum, and the Schutte family also donated the portion they have. So it's again, things that you're not going to find anywhere else. And we do, I believe, all of the Karras stuff is online, over 2,000 items in this collection. And you can see we have the basic information, vessel information if we have it attached to it. And so, you know, if you're looking for a particular vessel, a particular kind of vessel, or vessels built in a certain port, you can search for that here right in online.
Yeah, and I should add too that there are many photos in there that haven't been developed. I think they're glass plate negatives and things. We found one on maybe 10, 15 years ago that the museum had developed for me, and it was just breathtaking.
Yeah.
So there are hidden gems in there. If you get a chance to go to the museum, by all means do so.
Yeah, I mean, they're just wonderful images. And all these images, you can see the watermark here, but if, say, for a publication or for research, you're looking to get copies of these, you can order those from us directly, and we'll be happy to get those printed off for you. There's the Simmons right there.
So I know it was not too many years ago, I was involved in another major donation to the museum. My friend Jerry Metzler, one of the Great Lakes most, I would say most important researchers, he spent his life's work was to collect data on every vessel that ever sailed the Great Lakes prior to 1900. And we arranged for his database to be donated to the museum. And it was a tremendous project, and the museum has put his database online in searchable form, and it is the largest Great Lakes vessel database in existence. Can you show us a little bit about it?
You bet. And you can see, we have the portal from our website, but this actually is, we host this on a separate site. So here it is. And Jerry's still working on this and updating the information all the time. And as we can, we update the online database. But you can see it's a pretty simple search process. So again, if you're looking for a specific vessel, here we go. How about the lumberman? And you can search. And so we have a number of lumbermans here. But if we go to this top one, okay, you'll be able to see the information, again, that Jerry compiled through various different sources over the years. And these were all, Brendan, if I'm correct, these were all on cards, right? That then had to be transcribed and all the information put into the database here. And he's
right.
He's been working for years to do that.
Yeah, one of the things he did is he went through all the enrollment documents. So if you scroll down, the
Yeah.
big difference is that he shows every owner and every master and every paper the thing ever had, as well as when it ended with, in the notation on the enrollment, vessel lost. You get its various measurements, but when you look, you can see who every master and every captain and every owner was. And then he goes and shows all the major events in the ship's career. So really an important resource, probably the most important, I think, on the lake. So there are many other fine and equally important databases. This is always one that I consult every time. And is it greatlakeships.org?
GreatLakesVessels.org.
I'm sorry, greatlakesvessels.org. Greatlakeships.org is the Labadee database, another excellent database hosted over at Alpena.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, really important resource.
Yeah. So those are some of the archival resources we have. All right. All right. So I think let me see here. I don't know what you want to tackle next here. If you want to go back, I have a few more images of the museum.
Let's talk about the citizen historian work
sure.
that the museum is doing. And in particular, I was interested, Abby Diaz, one of the museum staff, has a really interesting piece on Captain Blaney, exploring her connections to the Great Lakes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You bet. So you're still sharing my screen here?
I'm seeing your screen, yep.
Okay. All right. So you saw under education there, we just added recently this online resources tab. And with this, we pulled together a number of new online resources that not just students and teachers and classrooms can access, but I think that are interesting to researchers and general public. Lesson plans and activities. We have a video resource library that we're adding to all the time. And again, since March 14th, the doors have been closed. And very soon after that, of course, the Wisconsin Safer at Home guidance came into place. So our core staff has been working from home, and a lot of what we've been doing, and Abby Diaz, our director of education in particular, is putting together or leading the team to put together some of these online resources. I think a really great one that you mentioned, Brendan, you can see kind of some of these different lesson plans and things like that. But I think one of the things, here's Titus doing a whitefish dissection, which got a lot of great press. We're also transcribing all of our resources here into Spanish as well, to make sure we have things accessible. Everything has captions as well. But this video that Abby put together to talk about what she's been doing while sitting at home. Turn that down a little bit. So can you still hear me talk over the music?
Yep.
Okay. So she used not only our collection, but a host of online resources to research her family and some maritime connections that she knew she had. And completely from home, she was able to piece together a really fantastic story. I won't go through the whole video here, but I really invite you to take a look at this. It's great. It's kind of a great intro or a primer to how to do maritime research online. And it mentions not only the resources here, but other places you can access data, including genealogical research, the Labadee collection up in Alpena, and a lot of other things. There's not only the video, but then also she has put together slides. So if you want to, if you don't want to sit through a 7-minute video, you can go through here and get the gist of the story from slides.
Cool. Well, it sounds too like these are some things that maybe parents who are doing some home lessons with their kids could use.
That's exactly it. And because she uses this one, this personal connection to illustrate this, the different newspaper items that she used to pull together, she could figure out the house that this captain used to live in Chicago. Again, this is all just setting from home. It's a wonderful resource, and especially if you're new to maritime research, or if you have a younger person who you're trying to get interested in this kind of thing, this is a fantastic way to do that.
Wow. And she did an excellent job with that. It's really impressive.
She did. She's the best. Again, all kinds of resources here, and we're adding to it all the time. And here's something that I think this group might be interested in. There's a lot of citizen science programs, but we're trying to do some citizen historian programs, a transcription project where we have all these great things at the museum that we're trying to make more accessible, but we only have so many people, and right now we can't get in the building. So what can we do? And we can kind of crowdsource some transcribers, hopefully many of you. So we have some guidance here on how you would do this, and then we have a bunch of documents here that you can help transcribe. Let me just show you one. This is one, I love this. This is a letter written on USS Lagarto, which was one of our Manitowoc subs, one that actually was lost in the war. So you can come in here, read these letters, and then on the side over here, type those out for us. And then we can use this for exhibits. We can use this online. We can use this to share with more curriculum pieces. So there's something that you can help us with while we're working remotely.
Very neat stuff, Cathy. And let's move along. I think we've got about 12 minutes left. But one of the things I know we wanted to talk a little bit about is the fact that Manitowoc is like dead center of the new proposed Lake Michigan shipwreck sanctuary. That's got to be really exciting.
It is. It is. I mean, this is the resource that's out here in the lake is of national importance, and those of us who are familiar with Wisconsin shipwrecks know that and have known that for a long time. But I think it's great that there's national attention being paid to this. This is the proposed site covers kind of the whole Mid-Lake Michigan area. So just south of Port Washington, up through Two Rivers, and actually up to Kewaunee County. So that whole stretch of the Mid-Lake area. So you're talking dozens and dozens of shipwrecks that are known, and you have many more out there to be found or relocated. And all these fantastic communities who have a maritime focus already, whether it's the Maritime Museum in Manitowoc, or down in Port Washington, the Port Explorium down there. Sheboygan, of course, has a brand new, beautiful visitor center and a wonderful focus on the maritime heritage in town. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. And certainly from a museum's point of view, not just the attention, but kind of that extra layer of protection for the shipwreck sites, the extra level of research that can take place. I mean, I think we both pulled out the fact that we have one of the best state programs in the country, but the way that the sanctuary program works is that it works in partnership hand in hand with the state. So I think it's just going to be an absolutely fantastic thing for the museum and for Wisconsin.
Definitely. And I know it's a lot of people aren't aware of this. Wisconsin has more wrecks on the National Register of Historic Places than all other 50 states combined. The vast majority of those were put on there through the efforts of Tammy Thompson, our current state underwater archaeologist, and just a really amazing person with seemingly boundless energy. I don't know how she has managed to do everything that she's done, but just a great program. So we're very fortunate here, and I know the people in Michigan often say they're pampered Wisconsin shipwrecks, which is probably
Well, and rightly deserved so. Like you say, not only Tammy, but just the folks who have been focusing on this stuff for years. They get that attention because there's been folks here to pull that out, whether it's from a museum standpoint or an archaeology standpoint. It's great, and the fact that NOAA has noticed this, and the communities here have kind of coalesced around this. To see that kind of cooperation is really great, and I tell you, we couldn't be more happy, especially because we are that repository for a lot of these artifacts, and as you all know, a lot of the items that were originally on these sites were taken off in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, kind of before it either wasn't it was acceptable or more acceptable or kind of less enforced to be able to take those things off. And folks with the best intentions trying to save these things remove them. And what I hope to see personally, again, someone who's studied these wrecks and just is passionate about sharing these stories, I'm hoping that some of those items can come back into the public sphere and can be part of the storytelling that we can do going forward, stabilizing them and cataloging them and curating them and then putting them on display for folks to see. So I think, again, just the more attention, whether it's through the sanctuary or through the state or through the museum, that we can get to these resources, the more I think that the efforts of all the folks, including the wreck hunters, who initially had spent their time and money and risked their neck to go out there and dive on these things, all that can kind of come back together into a public venue.
What's interesting about that is now with the quagga mussels and all the incrustation on the wrecks, in many instances, the only artifacts we have that are in decent shape are the ones that were removed.
They are.
So a lot of these guys are in their 70s or 80s, and the artifacts don't have a lot of financial monetary value. And many of these old-time wreck hunters and divers have been donating these materials to museums, and the Wisconsin Maritime Museum is the State Maritime Museum. So, if you do have those materials out there and you want to find a home for them, the museum will take them, and we're not going to demonize anybody. In fact, we're very appreciative that these artifacts were preserved.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's a timeline of these, a history of these artifacts, right? And part of that timeline is what happened to it since it came off the wreck. And to capture that information it is really, really valuable. If it's just a rusty piece of shipwreck part sitting there, it's losing that historic value. So we not only want to have these things to where the public can see them, we want to get those stories, the stories of where they came from, how you found these wrecks, how they were retrieved, what I mean, this is important, and at the museum we value this, and I hope folks can at least come and talk to us and let us know where these things are and have a look at it.
That's a big change, in the way things were not very many years ago when I was, WUAA, when we first got going. Boy, nobody wanted to tell the story of the wreck hunter or of the artifact thief. Now, and again, most of these were recovered legally, but now we do want to tell that story about these wreck hunters. We want to tell the story about these early divers and how these artifacts were recovered, because that's how they got preserved. So, it's an excellent story to tell. We have a lot of really interesting personalities and people who you still look for these wrecks, like Steve Radovan, great example, a good friend of mine, you know,
and a great friend of the museum. He actually is part of one of our exhibits, talking about how he looks for sites. And again, you know, I think most of the folks who really care about this history, and were doing that by recovering things years ago, realize that, you know, leaving things where they are now is the way to go. But, you know, continuing to look for these things, continuing to work hand in hand with the state, with the federal folks, and everything, I think is, I mean, it's really a great example of how these things can work hand in hand to the benefit of the public, and the benefit of, you know, retelling this story that we all care about so much.
Very true, Cathy. So, you know, it's got to be a challenge right now with everything locked down. With you can't even go to the museum yourself. I mean, it's closed down. How are you guys coping with that, with this, and how are you able to continue to leverage the museum in the ways that you are?
Yeah, I mean, you know, well, the core of it is we have a really fantastic team. We have a great staff. We have a strong board. We have a lot of great volunteers. So we're able to keep moving forward as much as we can. Of course, all of our tour guides, our overnight staff, our you know, frontline folks, they're all furloughed. I mean, there's no tours to give right now. But our core staff is going forward as best we can. And that's shifting from, I mean, this is our busiest time of year for field trips. And so we've completely shifted from, you know, deploying folks, you know, to the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 buses a day that would be coming through the museum, having them work on getting stuff online, working with our partners to try to carry out our mission as best we can. Of course, like many other cultural institutions, we're well, dependent probably too much on earned revenue and gate emissions and things like that. So we're certainly hurting, but, you know, we are not only holding our own, we're being very creative about how we can keep fulfilling our mission. So we'll be fine. We'll keep going. But if folks would like to help us out, volunteering or being part of some of these efforts is great. We also have certainly you can become a member of the museum. I think that's one of the best things that you can do, not only to help us out financially, but I think to stay engaged and get kind of the most up-to-date information about what's happening with the museum. You get our fantastic publication, The Anchor, 4 times a year, and you know, free admission as well, which is great. Another thing, we certainly are happy to have folks contribute and support what we do through our website, and we also have just actually launched a GoFundMe that is particularly to support getting some of those online resources, some of those education resources up and running. So you can certainly be a part of that as well.
Great. I'd really like to encourage our group members, particularly from Wisconsin, or if you're just going to come and visit Wisconsin, think about joining the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. Definitely come and visit. And you know, if you're already a member and you really like the museum and are active in it, consider donating to the GoFundMe. I've done so, and I would encourage others to do so as well, because it is really kind of our core maritime museum here in Wisconsin. So great stuff, Cathy. I'm really glad to hear that the museum is doing really well through this and finding creative ways to continue to be, you know, active and important.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's shocking at first when your plans get derailed. But again, we all came together, and I mean, I know we're going to come out of this stronger than ever before. And don't worry, even though the museum's not open, we're keeping an eye on cobia and the collections and everything else.
Very cool, Cathy. Well, we're just about up to the hour. It's been a wonderful evening of discussion, and I think we, you know, some great stuff about the museum that we got to show here. And like I say, it's I'm here in Wisconsin, so I'm kind of biased a little bit. But this show is based all over the Great Lakes, and I hope to have other museums on as well. And I know in the not too distant future, we have Mark Sprang coming on from the Historical Collections of the Great Lakes at Bowling Green State University. So really excited to get Mark on. I do want to also feature the National Museum of the Great Lakes in Toledo, and also the Dawson. Probably some of the others too. I had Fred Stonehouse on. We talked a little bit about the Marquette Maritime Museum, but I do actually plan to have Tom Farnquist on, even the former director of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum at Whitefish Point. So a lot of great museums. Please support them around the Great Lakes, folks. Next week, our guest is going to be Tom Kowalczyk, I mentioned, from Cleveland Underwater Explorers, one of Lake Erie's best researchers and shipwreck discoverers. Going to be a really exciting conversation. After that, we have Kevin Ailes from the Michigan Underwater Preserve Council. MUPC has had, I think it's last night it was 13 underwater preserves in Michigan. I think there may be more now. And we're going to talk about Michigan's underwater preserve programs. It's going to be great talk. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and most of all, I'd like to thank you, Cathy, for coming on and sharing with our viewers and talking about our great resources here in Wisconsin.
Oh, hey, Brendan, I am so glad that you asked me to be here. This was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, and I want to thank everybody who asked questions online. And please tune in next week, and don't forget the 25th, the Inland Seas Online Shipwreck Festival. We hope to see you there. All right, everybody. Have a good night.